Hey everybody, this is Brian Azio again from Hebrew Hearts. I turn 38 tomorrow. It's kind of sad to me. 38 years old, single, and live in a basement apartment, which is, it's been a godsend, but it's still a basement apartment. Don't own a house, don't have a career per se. My first book is self-published, but it's not published. Trying to do ministry for 10 years and still don't make enough in ministry to pay for the websites, monthly fees. So I guess on paper I haven't really done a lot. I've tried to do a lot. I have 3 college degrees but no licenses. And without a license you might as well not have a degree. You just have a piece of paper and a lot of debt but no ability to get a real job with it. So I'm thinking about success a lot and what that actually means. I heard somebody make a very good observation, especially ministry-wise, that if you look at all the prophets, most people, and I'm not saying I'm a prophet, I'm not the son of a prophet, I'm actually a teacher, so I'm not claiming anything prophetic. But for example, if you look at the prophets in the Bible, human measures of success of a prophet would be how many people repented. Maybe how many prophecies came true if you look at it in a modern sense, but look at the really biblical sense, how many people repented? And Jeremiah would have been a colossal failure if using the human measurement of success. Jeremiah would have been a complete, utter, catastrophic failure. Probably Isaiah and Ezekiel too, because there wasn't a whole lot of turnaround in their time. Moses would have not been very, very high either, because he came down from the mountain and they're dancing around a golden cow. But the most successful prophet would have been Jonah, because Jonah went to town. Actually, he got coughed up in the edge of town by a giant dinosaur fish, but people repented. Whole town repented. Whole city. This is millions of people. At the time, Nineveh was the capital of the Assyrian Empire, which is one of the largest empires in the world. I mean, this is probably millions of people, at least hundreds of thousands of people. And Jonah had a little help from an eclipse and being coughed up out of a whale, which they worshipped, and probably being purple from the stomach acid from the whale would have taken his body hair off, changed his skin tone. But still, Jeremiah, using our standard of measurement that we use in the church, using the Messianic movement, the numbers measurement, Jeremiah would have been a catastrophic failure. Isaiah and Ezekiel as well. Moses would have been fired. But Jonah would have been a colossal success because there were people who actually repented. But that's not God's measurement, because God's measurement is based on obedience. Obedience is success. Not outcome, but obedience. Because Jonah was not obedient. Jonah had to be poked and prodded and pushed and killed. I mean, the man died. He went to the gate, as Perry Stone talks about, he got wrapped in seaweed and went down to the gates at the bottom of the ocean and died, and the whale swallowed him up and kept him in its stomach for 3 days and coughed, which preserved him, and coughed him back up. And he got brought back to life. It's like the sign of Jonah in the gospel, just 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the earth. So Jonah had to get killed and come back to life before he was do what he's supposed to do. But Jeremiah had a fire in his bones and a willing heart. He tried to not do it. He tried to not do what God wanted him to do, but the Spirit was so strong it still compelled him. Ezekiel had his wife taken. His wife died. And the next day he gets up and goes what he's supposed to do. He gets paralyzed on each side for almost a year. Probably more than a year, actually. And he still does what he has to do. Isaiah did what he had to do, and theoretically, according to the tradition, he got sawed in half. But he still did what he had to do. Under tremendous duress, tremendous pressure, they still voluntarily did it. Jonah, kicking, screaming, wailing, ran away to Spain. The whole night had to get swallowed by a whale and coughed up. Everybody in the boat with him almost before Jonah did what Jonah's supposed to do. So I think in And then afterwards, he's still pitching a fit that God didn't kill everybody. God didn't nuke the entirety of Nineveh. And Nineveh was a very evil place. They used to, they didn't like a judge in Nineveh. They would skin them alive and hang their skin over the edge of the city wall just so people could see what happens if you took off the Ninevites. I mean, they were the spiritual ancestors of the Nazis, or the Assyrians. They did some of the very same evil, atrocious things to the Jews. But Jonah didn't even want the people to repent. He was upset that they did repent. He was sitting out there sitting on the edge of the city with a stick and a kosher marshmallow on it, waiting for the barbecue attitude towards these people. But Jonah would have been the church success. He would have been the mega pastor, the famous pastor on TBN who got the whole city to repent and get saved. And you can imagine little salvation scorecards, and we had 600,000 baptisms a day because of Jonah, and he would have been a hero to the church. But in God's eyes, he's just a very, very rebellious prophet that we poked and prodded to do everything. And Jeremiah comes to town, and membership drops in half, and there's no money in the offering plate, and baptism's been dry for weeks. But God loved Jeremiah. He's obviously pleased with him. Even Jeremiah's scribe, Baruch, was promised his life would be preserved in the time of war because he's associated with Jeremiah. And so God had favor on Jeremiah. Even though the terrible things he went through, God had favor on Jeremiah. And even on the people associated with Jeremiah, he had favor. So there's a real blessing in that, a protection in that. But the people hated Jeremiah. The church leaders, the preachers, they hated Jeremiah. And by our modern measures, Jeremiah's a colossal failure. But Jonah would have been the guy. He's preacher of the year. And that can apply to so many situations, but you can't really measure success on paper. You can't measure it by offering plates or baptisms or church membership or book sales or bank accounts. Because the false prophets prospered. And just because you're in poverty doesn't mean you're a prophet or God's pleased with you or you're being persecuted as long as you just do stupid stuff. And just because you're wealthy doesn't mean God likes you and God's blessing you. Sometimes the devil blesses people for not doing their calling. It's their payoff for not doing their calling is wealth. So it's hard to measure on paper either way. There's some very wealthy people God has prospered, like Abraham. There's some very poor people God shines upon too. They're all through the scriptures as well. Like the widow with all the oil. She was poor, but God still loved her. God still shined upon her. On Ruth, now their poverty wasn't forever, but Ruth was poor. Ruth was picking cans up on the side of the road. For the recycling bin, poor. Migrant farm worker picking tomatoes in Texas, poor. Undocumented worker, poor. She was literally an illegal alien working someone's farm seasonally just for enough food to eat that day. But God obviously had favor on her. So we can't really judge by bank accounts, offerings, book sales, church attendance, either way. If it's really good on paper, might be God, might be the enemy, might be the flesh. Flesh might just be willing to do whatever it takes to have a concept of success. And there's nothing supernatural about it at all. This person just followed the rules for making money, and they made money. Sometimes God intervenes and causes it to happen, or causes it not to happen. Sometimes the enemy causes it to happen or not to happen. Who knows? But you can't tell just by that. Or poverty, it's hard to tell. Sometimes the devil made somebody poor, generational curses, calamities, etc. Sometimes God keeps them poor because if they were rich, they would totally depend on their money and totally forget he exists. And sometimes people just don't follow the rules of making money. So it's hard to say on that. But spiritually, his measure of success is totally different from ours. I don't know if I'm successful or not. I don't know. I'm just thinking about the measurement today because I'm getting older. And on paper, I have definitely not succeeded at anything. And spiritually, I'm not sure. But he has a different measure of success. In the world's eyes, even in the church's eyes, Jonah will be a colossal success, mega preacher, God shines upon him kind of thing. But in God's eyes, he's a rebellious child that had to be pushed and prodded. And Jeremiah was very, very favored by Yahweh, I believe. And Isaiah and Ezekiel and Moses and all these other people that saw a tremendous amount of what the world and the church would call failure as a leader, but they're obedient. God measures success in obedience, not outcome. The world and the church measure success by outcome. God measures it by obedience. And Jonah was not obedient, but he was successful. Jeremiah was obedient but not successful. So, hope that encourages somebody today. It's getting me through. Shalom to your hearts.